Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I'm your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Anne Sophie Jouhanneau. We knew that was going to be a problem right at the go. Anne Sophie is a bilingual French author based in the US. She has previously published novels and nonfiction books for teens, which have been translated into over 12 languages. The French Honeymoon is her debut adult novel. After graduating university in France, she moved to Amsterdam to begin a career in advertising. She then spent a few years in Melbourne before settling in New York City, where she lives with her French, Australian, American family, 2 gorgeous cats, and a whole lot of passports. Welcome, Anso.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to do this.
This is so fun. So so Anso came to my little apartment. I'm back in New York City for the month of April. And we just talked passports, which is a very exciting thing for those of you following American politics. I'm like, how do we get some more passports? Anyway, this is her adult debut thriller, which was so much fun. I gobbled this up.
Thank you.
Before we get into all the questions, so tell us about the French honeymoon.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
So
It's such a
fun.
pleasure, and to record together.
I know. I never
Lots
get
and
to
lots
do
of
this.
fun.
Yeah.
Total treat. Thank you, Danielle, for having me. So the French honeymoon is, the quick pitch is it's about a Paris honeymoon gone horribly wrong. The slightly longer pitch is it's about this woman who arrives on her Paris honeymoon without her husband. We don't know if she's married. We don't even know if she's married or not. No luggage. All she has is a lot of stolen cash. And on the other side of Paris, you have these 2 newlyweds who, on the surface, have everything. She's American, he's French. They're at this luxurious hotel having the honeymoon of their dreams. Or is it the honeymoon of their nightmares?
Right.
Read and find out.
So fun. As we heard in your bio, this is your first adult thriller. I mean, not only is this your first adult book, it's also your first thriller because if you look at Anso's page on whatever bookstore is your favorite, it's like kisses and croissants, and they're sweet.
It's very sweet. It's a rom-com, it has a happily ever after, spoiler alert.
Yes.
But they're very...
Which you have to read this one. It may not have.
It may not.
You may have to find out.
Unlikely to have a happy ending.
Not as happy as certainly as...
No, that is definitely not.
As kisses and croissants.
And yes, I think I find I love love. I know it's very corny to say, but I love love stories.
I love love stories.
I love romance. I love all of the, the big feelings.
Yeah.
But I really love dark stories as well. And I realized that I can be very into a love story and I don't need it to end well. I know I don't need I joke that I don't need everybody to be alive by the end of it.
You're not publishing that under Kisses and Croissants.
No, it's not a bright pink cover.
That's right. You have to sort of read the dark,
you
right?
Feel the vibes are different.
Yes, the vibes are different.
But yes, I just love exploring romantic relationships, and sometimes they end horribly.
Yes, as if you've been watching the show, you know that I have that kind of romantic story.
Yeah, exactly.
Although not quite this, not quite.
Everyone's still alive as far as
everyone is still alive. That's so true.
That's always a good thing. I do love exploring darkness. I do love exploring. I think one theme that I like in the French honeymoon is, obviously I wrote it, but you know what I mean, like, that I was drawn to is the timing of things. Sometimes you meet the wrong person at the worst time is how I describe it. Sometimes, there is an element of timing in meeting people.
Right.
In general and in romantic relationships. So I think that was something that I liked.
And when the book starts, one of the characters is grieving, right? I mean, she's lost her mother, and it's very much like, right, when things like that happen in your world, everything sort of splits open and is much less secure. And I think you're right. I think on stable ground, these characters might have made different decisions,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah, that's very true.
And we are all a victim of sort of our worst decisions in very difficult moments. So,
Yes.
so tell me, what would, I mean, obviously you published, it was Kisses and Croissants.
And French Kissing in New York.
Okay.
I published 2 young adult rom-coms in the US, and then I published a lot of books in French
Okay.
before that. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is my 3rd book in English in the US, first adult, first thriller. It's complicated.
It's very complicated. But are you writing in English?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But when you published in French, you're writing.
I wrote in French. Yeah.
Now,
I don't translate.
You don't translate.
I do not translate. So the funny story is my French books have been translated in a number of foreign languages. My 2 young adult rom-coms have also each been translated in 10 languages, different ones.
Yeah.
Well, most of the same.
Yes,
some
overlap, yeah.
But some slightly different. I don't translate. I have done translation. I do other types of writing work, and I do. I have translated. It's not something I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
It's not very. I mean, there's an aspect of creativity, but it's obviously not as creative
as writing a story.
Writing a story from scratch. So I have not yet had the case where someone wanted to translate my French books in English or my English books in French.
Okay, so that's so interesting.
That hasn't happened yet.
So the French honeymoon was not yet in French.
It is not.
Isn't that funny? So I do, but if they did, would you translate it?
No. I would not. I think I would leave that to the publisher. I have discussed this with my agent. I would like usually
right of refusal.
Yeah, like I would like a review.
No, a review. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Like I would like I would like to have a conversation with the translator. That's what I've asked. If the situation, if the situation presents itself, I would like to talk to the translator. I would like to read the manuscript before it goes out. I feel very funny about the possibility that it might be work in French, sold in France, in my name, but
is it your voice?
Is it my voice? Is it the words I would have chosen? Right. So there's a little bit of like the control freak in me.
Of course. Well, and also if you have French readers, which you obviously do, and they're going to pick up an Anne Sophie book, it better.
I want to feel, if my parents would read, my parents don't read English, right? So they would read it in French. And so anyway, the situation hasn't happened yet, but I would love to have a little eye over that if it happens.
And it's funny because of course, like if you have, we have books in different languages, and I would never even worry. I wouldn't think to worry about how it's done, assuming the publisher finds a good translator. I'm not going to go and try to figure out how to speak German in order to read a translation of my book. Yeah. But yeah, if it was a language that I spoke.
Yes, I would want, and then, and equally, I've had my books translated in lots of languages I don't speak, and I just completely.
Exactly.
They have run the titles past me sometimes, and it translates to them. Like, I trust you guys.
Yeah.
Like, this sounds good to me.
It doesn't make, Or sometimes I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. But if it works in your, in the Hungarian market, who am I? I have no idea.
Exactly. If you guys are happy with it, I'm happy with it. They send me covers. I don't know about you, but like they send me covers for approval. I'm like, I just checked that my name is spelled right.
You're right. Which actually, I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. It's happened. And in some I don't know what's the right word for it, Eastern European languages, they changed the what's the name of that? The Cyrillic? Is it?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like so your name is spelled differently anyway.
Right.
So anyway, as with everything in publishing, there's a lot of releasing control, letting go, and accepting that what will be will be.
So you wrote these, 2 YA romance novels, which I actually, to be honest, I've been looking at them thinking, this looks like a nice break. I want to read one. Which one was first?
Kisses was first, and Kisses is far more popular, like miles more popular than the second one. Like it just really resonated with audiences. And funny enough, so we're recording this on April 7th. So yesterday was Kiss's 4th birthday.
Oh yeah, I saw that on social media. Congratulations.
And people, I hear about this book all the time. It's still coming out. Well, it's come out in all the languages now, but it's still recent in other markets. Yes. And young adult readers can be so lovely and wonderful. And I get messages all the time. People really, really enjoyed this book, and it's it's sold pretty well, and it's living
so fun,
living a really good life.
And so, how does this is something we haven't really talked about on the show, which I really appreciate. Which is so when you have 2 babies, right? Yeah. This is what they are, right? And you're like you love them equally, differently, whatever. But it's sometimes kind of a little bit shocking. So, what is how do you feel about that? What
that one does much better than the other?
Your poor second book. Come on.
Also, I hear a lot of that. There's a lot of. So I mean, how I feel about it is, it is what it is.
Yes.
I will
very
say,
mature.
I probably
would be like, what's the problem?
Look, I probably should not admit this, but I was not in a good place in my life when I wrote the second one.
Fair.
I wrote it under an extremely tight deadline because sometimes it is how it
Yep.
has to be.
Yep. And
I
you have a baby?
I did not have a baby yet.
Okay,
No, I
wow,
didn't have a baby, but I went through,
Yes,
some personal
life.
challenges,
Yeah.
life. So there's a part of me who really loves that book and a part of me who really needed it to be behind me. And so when, I saw that it just hasn't sold many copies, hasn't resonated with as many people, there's a part of me like, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's bad.
I'm sure it's a beautiful book.
I worked
right.
as hard on it as I worked on Kisses for
Yes.
sure. But there's some bad feelings
Yes.
attached to it.
Well, I mean, also there's it's an interesting thing. Like when you sold your first book here, I mean, you've obviously done this a ton of times, but there's like all of a sudden you had you sort of have the freedom to write a book.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now you have a deadline to write a book.
And and I faced this with this one as well, because this one was also a 2-book deal. I wrote this over many years so face this as in the experience of writing this one and my next one, which is out next year, was like night and day.
Yeah.
This one I picked up, started and stopped a dozen times over. I was writing my 2As while I wrote this.
Yeah.
So sometimes I didn't touch it for months.
Right.
Lots of doubt. Can I do this? Will I manage to finish a thriller? Can I blah, 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 break into the adult market? All those questions. Yeah. And book 2, it's on the contract and my editor's waiting for it and go, go, go,
Right.
In this case, I will say writing book 2 so far, not wood, but whatever.
Yeah. Some wood. This is paper. Yeah. Paper.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have had so far a better experience writing book 2.
Good.
It just kind of worked. Yeah. Having said that, I have not heard from my editor yet with my edit. So it feels like it just kind of came together as a first draft. Anyway, we'll see what the revision.
Well, I'm sure there's always work to be done, right? Of course. Yeah. But that's exciting. I was going to ask about the next book. And so now you have a small child at home. I do have. We talked about that a little bit too. I have no small children, but still children in it. So I know so how do you?
It's been, how do I write?
How do you schedule your life?
Yes, how do I schedule my life? So this is funny because I started writing professionally, I guess, in my 20s. And at the time still am technically, but a total night owl. I want to say that many of my books that I wrote in late 20s, early 30s, and this is not an exaggeration, I wrote most of them between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. Yeah. Like it would take me the whole day to warm up, get fired up. Yes. And in the evenings when everything gets quiet, when it's starting to get dark outside, I entered a different universe, And I mean, it was also terrible because sometimes I felt like I lived completely thing. Yeah. You have a lunch meeting and for you, you barely woke up.
Right. It's like 6 a.m. Right.
Exactly. Right. It's like pros and cons, but it felt natural to me. Yeah. Obviously, in my 30s, those times got earlier. Yeah. Yeah. And now, up until the time I had a baby, I still very much value the writing time around like 4 to 7 p.m. Mm-hmm. My husband's busy job, so often we wouldn't have dinner until like 8:30. So that worked for me. And then often I would go back, I would write a little bit again between 9, 10, 11 and go to bed at like, a couple hours later. Obviously, that's completely out. Yes. You know what it's like.
And I have to be honest, I was same. Yeah. In fact, even when we had babies, my first book came out when my daughter was 8 months old. And she's 25.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a long time. But I used to do the same. Like I actually worked a day job and then I would get home and before babies, I would just get home and, have a little bit of dinner and then I would pour a glass of wine. This was my views. Yeah. And then I would work from, with 2 glasses of wine from 7 to midnight or so. Mm-hmm. And then I had to go to bed because I'd have to get up and do the job thing again. But when the babies were born, it didn't change. I still felt like I had to, that was my evening hours, but I would be working, the hours got much shorter, of course.
Right, exactly.
So what do you do now?
So what I do now, so he's in full-time childcare. Yes. Right. So I become a morning person.
I love, I love that you're flexible that way.
Against my will, against my instincts and my nature and all of the things, but I drop him off. I'm usually back at my desk by 9:30, ready by 9:30. And really, I have a strict out at 5. I have to go, and I very rarely go back to it. I have
Yes.
he's under 2. He's very, very active.
Yeah.
I spend 5 to 8, doing dinner
Oh,
and
I
bringing a
know.
child into a
Right.
bathtub and reading a bazillion books.
Is
And
that why you wrote a thriller?
he wasn't born yet.
Just
I was,
I'm totally
but there's
teasing.
definitely a little bit of it's a by the time I'm put what it's I mean
Yes.
remember you put children to bed, you like fall asleep partly with them, and then
Yeah.
you have even like last night I was thinking there's a brutality in like you're in the dark for 20 minutes with them, you open the door and it's bright outside the room, and you don't
Right.
you still have to go clean up the kitchen and
Right,
whatever,
right. And hopefully
and
talk to your husband a little bit before you both pass
like
out.
5 minutes.
Yeah. It gets easier. That part gets easier.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So when I was on deadline for book 2, yes, I would write a little bit again, like between 8 and 9 p.m.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I don't have to, it's hard. It's
Yes. Well, and it sounds like, I mean, for some of those years were you also doing other work as well as the books? Yeah. So, and are you still doing that?
Not right this minute,
Nice.
because I
Okay.
do have to be, finished at 5. Like I don't have the
Yes.
option to write evenings that much,
Yes.
work evenings.
Yes.
I do, and for book 2, I did write a lot on the weekends.
Yeah.
I did do a lot of work on the weekends just because I had a lot of stuff going on,
Right.
and the deadline doesn't, still the deadline's there.
Yes.
So that I have
Yeah.
that flexibility,
Yeah.
and on occasions I would, get a babysitter for the weekends if we
Yeah.
both have things on, or my husband obviously looks after his son. And yeah, it's hard. Your time is not yours anymore.
Yes,
A
it's
lot of your
different.
time is not yours
Yeah.
anymore.
And I think the other thing that's interesting is I feel like before kids, which for me it feels like I can barely remember, but my my sort of vague memory is that you can kind of live with the characters in your head a lot more. It's like having, you're kind of, and I feel like that's so useful. It's actually happening again. So now I'm an empty nester, which is this weird other, but because I feel like sometimes they need to sort of be moved along when you're not like at the computer staring at a blank
Yes,
screen,
for sure.
but you're also like trying to work out a problem or trying to pull something along, and it works so much better. And with the immediacy of especially a young child,
Yeah.
there's not much room.
No, you're very much in the here and now. Is he going to trip over?
Yes.
Does he need a snack? Is he,
Right.
crying for whatever reason? Definitely. I do have quite a bit of a commute a short commute, but I walk a lot back and forth
Yes.
to where he's at
Which
daycare.
gives you.
So it gives me, I walk a lot more. I would in the past never have gone for a walk at 8 in the morning. I'm
Yeah.
not that kind of person. And now
Right.
I have to.
Right.
So I do that. There's definitely a lot of times where I'm playing with him, and in the back, it's like, how's she going to murder this
Right.
guy?
Right, right.
So that's kind of fun, but I do feel like I'm two different people.
Yeah,
At 5.
yeah.
Like during the day, I'm like my office self. I'm
Right.
with you, dressed in clothes that
Right.
aren't stained, I think.
Right. Right. You're like, this is probably not gonna.
There's no yogurt on this that I've noticed. And then, when I go get him at the end of the day, it's like mom mode,
Yeah,
armed with all the
yeah,
snacks and,
yeah.
and all the things. But
Does it make you think about like, I mean, obviously this book is about people, who are just starting their sort of adult lives and getting married.
Yeah.
Can you can you give us any hints about the new book, or you don't want to yet? It's fair to say.
I don't really want to
Okay,
yet.
fair
So the
enough, fair
weird thing is we have a finalized title, a finalized cover as well.
Oh, wow.
Even though it's in a year's time. But I feel like I don't really know how to talk about this
Yes,
yet.
I get
so
that.
I think I'll wait.
Fair.
Offline,
So it's
offline, I'll tell you.
yeah. Oh, good. I'm gonna learn something you guys don't hear.
Yeah.
It is interesting too, because I do think that, especially if you said you mentioned that you turned it in, but you haven't heard from your editor yet.
Yeah.
So so it's like, there is a sense of like, in some ways you're like, I think it's done, and then but we might find out that
It's not. I don't. So I
you probably think it's not done.
It's definitely not done. I sent her, sorry, 100 pages last summer.
Okay.
Hoping that I'd get like, a good amount of thoughts and whatever on it. And her response was, "This is fun." And that was the gist of her email.
Right.
So I thought at least she just hated that.
Right. Well, and I do think that's good news, right? Because if she's gonna work with you for the whole book. So if she had seen something in those first 100 pages that was alarming or off,
she said, "Be mindful of X," and but she was like, "I don't think it's necessarily the case, but just something to be mindful of because of the topic." Actually, you know what? I'll tell you this. I describe as gowns and parties and champagne and murder. Basically.
I love it. Games and parties.
No, gowns.
Oh, gowns. Oh,
it's very red carpety.
Oh, I love it.
Actually, that's another clue. Red carpets.
Okay, red carpets. And of course, like my brain immediately goes to like blood.
I mean, it's not completely wrong. Although if you've read this, you know that I like my murders clean. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Fair enough. I love that. Okay, so will you go back, do you think, and do
I have no plans. To young adult, I have no plans. Never say never.
Yeah.
One thing I want to have the freedom to do in my career, which I think is, a high reach, but if I have an idea for something, I will just write that.
Yes.
That's what I would love to be able to do. If I have an idea for young adult novel, I want to write it.
Yes.
However, I don't see it happening right now because I've been feeling very good in this new world.
Good.
My new agent, I don't think really reps young adult authors. Okay. I mean, I don't think
so you did change.
I did change.
Okay, yeah.
I might write a rom-com again. I might write something lighter for sure. As in I have ideas for things that are lighter. I feel right now, when I was writing these very sweet young adult books, it didn't feel quite like me. Now I feel like I'm
more in your space.
Yes, I feel like, and it sounds like.
Although we look at you, doesn't everybody do that and say, "Oh, but how can you write something so dark? You're so sweet looking."
Dark on the inside.
I know. I used to get that comment so much.
I know.
Because my first book I was 29.
Yeah.
And so not only do I look, pretty innocent.
Yeah.
But I also was, super young. People were like, how can you?
But people, I love it because people are like, I have blue eyes and I'm blonde and therefore I must be sweet. I'm like, that's
I know.
That's your judgment.
Exactly.
That is not me.
That's right. There are plenty of light-haired, blue-eyed people who are very, very dark.
Exactly. And yes, I think I just really love, so it's not, for me, it's not this. I'm not really drawn to goriness. There's not like the murders are piling on. And I mean,
right.
In my own books,
right.
I read everything.
Yes, right.
But I think it's more, I love the suspense. I love the psychological aspects. And I really don't really need characters to be likable or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like messy people making terrible decisions.
Yes.
I really love that.
And we're not going to, there's at the back of the book in your author's note, you talk a little bit about some inspiration. I don't want to get specific.
No, because it's very spoilery.
It's very spoilery. So don't read the author's note before you've read the book. And so you do start by saying, this is a spoiler. So don't, I'm curious because that was, it sounded like a French story. I was not a first story I was familiar with.
Yeah.
But so at some point you took this book, the story you'd heard, and you made it, and you took other aspects of true crime. You kind of wove this thing together the inspiration was sort of.
So I had this very weird experience.
Yeah.
And I when other authors say that, I'm always like, really? But it really did happen to me where, I was writing these really sweet, cute books, feeling a bit unfulfilled. And one night I thought to myself, well, I've always admired thrillers so much.
Yeah.
Could I do this? Like, I felt like the answer was definitely no, but I did have that question. And I go to bed. And so before I had a baby, I was a terrible sleeper. I had insomnia. It would take me hours to fall asleep. Now I just
That's so lovely, actually. There you go. That's a gift.
I fall asleep in like 5 minutes. I'm awake at 3 a.m. But
yes, exactly.
And I went to bed and I literally, it's when your dreams are so vivid that you feel like you're fighting people and you're like, you're so there. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, it's this twisted romance with the honeymoon gone wrong and it's going to be called the French honeymoon. And that has never happened to me before. Might never happen to me again. Especially titles. I find titles really hard.
Oh, they're the worst.
This one I woke up the next morning and I thought, it's a thriller. It's called the French honeymoon. And that's it. And everyone has always liked the title.
Yeah.
And my publisher also my editor also liked the title, but they do this thing where they do testing, like data testing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put a few titles
crowdsourcing or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, consumer. I don't know exactly how they call it, and I think they're a bit, it's their own secret sauce. So
totally.
I don't know the details, but I had to come up with different titles. So this book for 5 years was called The French Honeymoon. And no one's ever questioned it. And my editor suddenly goes, you must give us different titles so we can, test against them. And we were like, no, it's called The French Honeymoon. But that's how they do things. So I came up with a few titles. And it's funny because I am not the most optimistic person, but deep down inside me, I thought this book, it is called The French Honeymoon. It came like it was born this way.
Yeah, it was born right. Baby was born this way. Yeah.
And I think my agent was a little bit like, a bit nervous, and I thought, no, I believe in it, and it was, there was another title, I can't remember what it is now, that also tested well, but
But they didn't fight you on that.
no, because when it's too close, like when there's two that are close, they think
you get to choose.
You get to choose.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, it's a golden French honeymoon.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of books that I didn't have anything to do with the titles. It is interesting. I mean, I actually kind of think I very rarely had a title that I was like attached to. The book that's coming out in February now is like the first title. I'm like, Pinky Swear is Pinky Swear.
Title, yeah.
Don't screw with it.
Yeah,
don't fuck with Pinky Swear. God damn it.
It's a great title.
But it's funny because the British market, they've been looking at it, and it doesn't have the same translation there. And so I'm, but then we're like, well, sorry. So open the book and have a definition of Pinky Swear, because it can't be that hard to understand, but it is interesting. I do feel like sometimes they really are. It just it takes the story to a different level, like with the title, and if it doesn't sync, it feels strange.
I get that, and I think the way my publisher presented it is they have research that they have data that shows to them that they sell more books if they test the covers and they test the titles.
Hard to argue.
So exactly. So I'm like, well, if you think doing this process is going to reach a larger audience, I'm doing it.
Exactly.
And for my second one, I had a title that, again, I liked, my agent really liked. I think my editor also liked it, but we tested it, and it's the title of a very famous Taylor Swift song, and I think it got, which is a completely different story.
Totally.
So exactly. So that was a case of coming.
And is that out there now?
No, it's not. I'm not telling you.
I know. I was like, wait, what's the title?
No.
But we will find. It sounds like you have a cover and a title. So at some point in the next few months, we will see them.
I think we're waiting for this one to be out. And,
yes,
all of that. I mean, I don't know this cover came out, as in was made public, like August, September. So it might be a little while, but
6 or 7 months beforehand. Yeah,
something like that. But so anyway, we went through a lot of different titles, a lot, and then everyone seemed to agree on it. So off we go. Now, to be honest with you, now I see it's a much better thriller title.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I mean, these people probably know what they're doing, right?
They do.
We can doubt them, but it is sort of their job.
Yes, exactly. And my editor's amazing, and she does a lot of thrillers. She works with a lot of very well-known authors. A lot of very successful and brilliant authors. So I'm in very good hands.
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
I know, and I love some of the authors that your publisher publishes. So a lot of really incredible people. Okay, so tell our listeners now where to find you online, because I know I see you on social media, and it's fun and also you're going to do a signing in New York.
Event.
So tell us about that.
Of course. So I'm pretty much on every social media platform, but the only one I actually use is Instagram. So it's at ASJOUHANNEAU. And I have a Substack newsletter, which is, I started a few months ago. I'm really enjoying writing it. So if you Google my name, you will find it, and it's called Creative Encounters.
Oh, okay. I love that.
So I've been,
And your big event is...
my big event is April 16 at Barnes & Noble, Upper West Side. So Wednesday, April 16 at 7 p.m.
I love it.
I will be in conversation with a mutual friend, Greg Wands.
Oh, I love Greg Wands too. If Greg Wands were a girl, he would have been on Killer Women already.
I know. Oh, right. I didn't think. Yeah.
Or
he can get an in through. No. Okay, fair enough.
Killer Women has to have some boundaries, because otherwise, can you imagine how many people I could talk to?
I know. One day I asked a male author I knew, I don't know why, I thought he might be a Reese Book Club pick, and I was like, oh, and he said, well, no, I can't be. And I thought, interesting.
Isn't it lovely that there are just a few things?
I love it, but I do know, we all dream of being that Reese Book Club pick.
We do.
I mean, it's very,
very hard to come
very hard, but I just, at least we can dream about it.
They can't even dream about it, and we can dream about it. But there's a few things that they get that we don't. So it's all fair.
It's all good.
This was so much fun, and so the French honeymoon, you guys, you have to go and look at this cover. It's fabulous. We will be giving away a copy of the book on our Facebook page, and we will see you next time. This was Killer Women.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye.